So it's that time of year again when combine harvests all over Ireland and the UK are flat out trying to gather up the harvest. Barley is nearly all cut at this stage, getting into wheats now and oat, oilseed rape, that kind of stuff. Weather's a little bit broken here in Ireland at the minute, so there will be a little bit of a lull period at the minute. But I couldn't help thinking during the week, I was thinking to myself, when I remember back to the 80s, there was a lot more choice, there was a lot more models, a lot more makes of combines out there. When I say models, I mean different manufacturers. Whereas now, the whole market seems to be swallowed up by 3, maybe 4 big players. So you have obviously Claas, New Holland, John Deere, and Case to a lesser extent. The Case Axle Flow to a lesser extent. You have some smaller players. Then you'd have a few Deutz, a few Fendt, but nothing really as big as, say, the top 3, your New Hollands, your John Deere's, and your Claas. They have that end of it all wrapped up. But when you think back to the 80s, what were the most popular combines in the 80s? Now, I've got a list here. I think I've got about 8 on the list, all from different manufacturers. But I'm not comparing one combine against the other. It's not a top 10. It's just what I believe and what statistics tell me are the most popular combines in Ireland and the UK around that time. Now, I'm not comparing one combine here against another because they all come within different ranges, and those different size combines within each range. It's just what statistics say was the most popular back in around the 1980s and into the 1990s. So I'm going to start off. The first one, and it's in no particular order, is a combine that I seen a lot working. My uncle used to drive one for a local large tillage farmer, and if you had one of these, you were a big farmer. And it was the New Holland 8080. Now, the New Holland 8080 had a hydrostatic transmission. It was 4-speed. It had 6 straw walkers. It had a huge, large glass cab. The cab, I remember, was massive on it. It was powered by a 175 horsepower Mercedes-Benz OM 401 9.6 litre V6 turbo engine. The grain tank was, I think, 6,300 litres in capacity, and the cutting platform width was up to 21.5 foot, something around that. It was measured in metres. It was something around that. My uncle drove one of these for a good few years for a very large tillage farmer in our area at home, and they were a massive combine when it was in comparison to what we were driving at the time, the smaller end of the John Deere market, the 900 series John Deere combines at the time. Next one then is the Case Axial Flow IH, so the IH 1460, and this obviously was a rotary machine compared to the walker machine. So the Case Axial Flow was one of the first of the rotary combines to really become popular. Now, John Deere did they had rotary combine development in the 1950s, actually. A lot of people don't like to talk about this. They like to think the Case were the first ones and New Holland were the first ones with rotary combines. But actually, John Deere were building rotary combines in the 1950s. They just never proceeded with it. The Case IH 1460. So that was a single rotor combine, 167 horsepower engine. And it was a DT 436 International at 7.1 litre. So cutting platform on this, I believe, was up to 7 metres, 3-speed, hydro transmission, and a 7,000 litre grain tank. That's a very, very big grain tank. This was a high output machine. So the rotary combines at the time were a very high output machine. I do remember the same uncle drove one of these as well when they moved on from the New Holland 8080. And this combine was all about performance. The straw, obviously, out the back, was an issue with them at the time when people were used to the nice soft handling of a walker machine. But the cab in them probably just wasn't as friendly as the New Holland or the John Deere's at the time with the SG2 cabs. But yeah, very, very popular combine back in the 1980s. And of course, as always, if you have a favourite, if you have a combine that you drove, or you remember looking across the hedge at a particular combine back in the 1980s, if you're in your 40s or your 50s now and you're a child or a teenager in the 1980s, please drop in the comments. If you're a driver of a combine in the 1980s or 70s, please share your experiences. So the next one then is one that I grew up driving. I learned to drive on a John Deere 1085. So the 1085 was the largest of the 1000 series John Deere. The largest John Deere combine in Europe at the time was a 1085. So it was a 6-cylinder, turbocharged 7.6 litre John Deere at 195 horsepower. Obviously it had that SG2 comfort cab, and it was a really, really nice quiet place to drive back in the 80s. There was very little space for a passenger, so if you were a passenger, you ended up sitting on the floor or sitting on the levers that were down on the left hand side of the driver for operating the reel and engaging the traction system and the unloading, or where you ended up sitting on those and vibrating up through your arse. But yeah, the cab was a little bit small, but it was a very, very comfortable, quiet cab from an operator's point of view. Of course, it was very, very well ergonomically designed. So it had the harvest tank monitor for performance and loss. So there was a digital LED screen that would monitor those straw loss or grain losses, a grain loss monitor, performance monitor, and you could drive to the monitor. That was one of the first of the grain monitoring systems. 6-walker machine, obviously. 4-speed mechanical transmission with a CVT system, obviously, between each gears, driven through the belts, up to 18-foot header. I don't think they came in the header any bigger than 18 foot, so the 818 header. A lot of them came with 816 and 818 header. So that's a John Deere 1085. Next one then that was very popular was the Deutz the M2780. So this was a 5-walker machine with 8.1 tons, 160 horsepower, Deutz 6-cylinder turbo engine, 6.1 litre. Total screening area of 3.8 metres squared, 5,000 litre grain tank, and it was built between 1983 and 1986. They wouldn't have been hugely popular across the country, but there was a good few of them over our way, as we did have a fairly big Deutz dealer. So they were very popular, and there's still a lot of them going today, and they are sought after combine. Next one then is the Fortescue. So the Fortescue E514 was another one. With plenty of them around Ireland, plenty of them in the UK. They were a cheaper alternative. I think they were built in Poland. I'm not 100% sure. If anybody knows, I think they were built in Poland. Smaller engine, 4-cylinder engine, 114 horsepower IFA VD engine with a CVT transmission. Obviously a belt-driven CVT transmission, 3-speed. It was a 4-walker machine and available in wheel or in a crawler type track as well, so you could get them in a crawler machine. Next up then, you can't forget Massey Ferguson. So Massey Ferguson, the 865, and the 865 had a V8 Perkins engine at 184 horsepower, 180 bushel tank, 16-foot header as standard, and a 22-inch rotor. So this was a rotary machine like the axial flow. 4-speed hydrostatic transmission. Again, not too many of them around Ireland, not too many of them around my area. They might be more popular down the country. In the UK, they would have been very popular. There would have been a lot of them. Rotary machines on the bigger farms that were looking for output to get a lot of work done. Rotary machines would have been a lot more popular, and the MF 865 was one of them. It was there. Next one then, another one very popular in Ireland, obviously the Claas Dominator. So the Claas Dominator was powered by a 6-cylinder turbocharged Mercedes-Benz OM 352 engine, and it was rated at 150 horsepower. 5,200 litre grain tank. It had 5 straw walkers, 3-speed transmission, and it had a cutting platform of up to 5 metres. And the Claas Dominator, there's still a lot of them out there around Ireland cutting today, and there's still a lot of people looking for them as well. There's a lot of people would love to get their hands. I know a lot of lads would like to get their hands on a nice clean Claas Dominator from the 1980s. They were a superb machine and very, very popular, especially around our way with a couple of large Claas dealers that we had. Last one then, not very popular in Ireland here at the time. Can anyone guess what it is? Levera. So the Levera 3850, which later became Fiat Agri. Fiat Agri bought out Levera. So it was powered by an 8.1 litre 6-cylinder Iveco turbocharged Iveco engine at 180 horsepower. This was a big machine. The 3890 was a good bit bigger, but the 3850 was the most popular from the statistics that I can find. There wasn't too many Leveras in Ireland that I know of, but there was in the UK. I know there was a couple of large dealers in the UK that supplied Levera. So yeah, conventional threshing system, 6-walker, 6,500 litre grain tank, so a very large grain tank, 4-speed mechanical transmission, 4.8 metre header. So yeah, quite a large machine. Again, they're very much loved, I know, across Poland and across Eastern Europe. Levera very much loved, and down into Italy as well. They are, of course, an Italian machine. Levera as well, they were very famous for making top class motorcycles at the time. Back, back into the 50s and 60s, Levera motorcycles were very, very popular. So, of course, yeah, Levera were bought out by Fiat Agri to be owned later, of course, by New Holland, and they were partly sold off to Agco. So there was bits of Levera scattered all over the world in various different companies. But yeah, a very popular machine. It wasn't too many of them in Ireland. I'd say any of them that come into Ireland, and I stand corrected on this, were probably imported secondhand. So if anybody knows that Levera were they sold new in Ireland, I don't know. I didn't look too much more deeply into any research on them. But if anybody knows any more about Levera, please give us a shout into the comments, because I know nothing about them. I don't know if I've ever actually seen one working other than on YouTube and places like that. So that's it. That's my wrap up of 8. Please add to the list. Let the viewers know what other machines are out there. I know there was the likes of Bison and that. There was a few of them floating around as well. They were made in Poland. They're probably imported from the UK and that. So that's it. That's the list. It's a short video today. It's all I have time for. I'm very busy, but I will be back next week with a normal video, and the week after that I have an even bigger video, one that everyone is waiting for, I hope. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all next week.